Hi, I'm MacKenzie Fegan, and this is 112 BK. Coming up, will Brooklyn's oat milk shortage continue to worsen? That's not one of the 19 stories to watch in 2019, according to the Brooklyn paper, although maybe it should be. We'll hear about their list from the new editor-in-chief.
Brooklyn's biggest celebrity couple, not John Krasinski and Emily Blunt, who just moved to Brooklyn Heights, but Pickles and Violet are really the four-legged stars of 2019 because of their runaway romance.
And then, are you extremely beautiful? If not, consider yourself lucky. Our senior extremely beautiful correspondent is here to tell you about the trials and tribulations of being drop-dead gorgeous.
It's not just beautiful people. It is luxurious people, gorgeous people, beautiful people, pretty people, or as we call it, the LGBT community.
Canine outlaws, homeless party boats, rampant baby making, amoral upzoning, zip lines, marijuana. These are among the 19 stories the Brooklyn paper will be keeping its eye on in 2019. To tell us more, we're joined by the recently appointed editor-in-chief of the decades-old periodical, Anthony Rotunno. Welcome to 112 BK.
Thank you so much, MacKenzie. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell me a little bit about your job, because you not only are the editor-in-chief of the Brooklyn paper, you have a myriad number of other sites and papers that you do coverage for. Is that right?
That's correct, yes. So aside from the beloved Brooklyn paper, I also edit and run two websites, brooklynpaper.com and brooklyndaily.com, and four other print newspapers that come out weekly: the Park Slope Courier, the Mill Marine Courier, the Bay News, and Brooklyn Graphic. So our coverage, our organization's coverage really spans the entire borough, up from Greenpoint all the way down to Coney Island and everywhere in between. It's 24 hours, 7 days a week, and as you so succinctly put it, there's just so much going on here.
Well, thank you for making time for us. Sounds like you are a busy man.
Well, I will always have time to appear on television.
So let's talk about your number 19 story. This is sort of a human interest story about Pickles and Violet.
Pickles and Violet.
Runaway dogs.
Yes, Brooklyn's biggest celebrity couple, not John Krasinski and Emily Blunt, who just moved to Brooklyn Heights, but Pickles and Violet are really the four-legged stars of 2019 because of their runaway romance. Pickles escaped on a walk last August, and for months, his owners mounted a search, and flyers for him appeared across the borough. I saw one outside of my bodega in Bushwick. My reporters saw them in Sunset Park, in Marine Park, in Ditmas Park, where he ran away from. And it was sort of this ongoing saga, and I think all hope was lost until in November, my reporter, Colin Mixon, who's really been dogged about this story, got in touch with Pickles' owners and, found out that they found him over by Brooklyn College by the old railroad tracks that cut through that neighborhood. But they didn't just find him, they found Violet, who had been lost for 2 years and had cozied up to Pickles at some point over his escape and, became pals until they were rescued.
And now the owners of Pickles are considering also adopting Violet?
Well, this story, it should have been higher on our list, quite frankly, because it took a bit of a twist. So Violet is ready for adoption. She's over at Sean Casey Animal Rescue in Windsor Terrace, and once we found that out, we immediately contacted Pickles' owners, who were a little hard to get a hold of. So we're not sure if they still have room for her. They had mentioned they were moving, and I don't know if her ready for adoption has preceded their ability to move and find a bigger space. We're hopeful they'll be reunited, but rest assured Violet will find a loving forever home, whether it's with her friend or not.
It sounds like a rom-com that I am interested in watching.
I know.
Netflix can target me with that.
The rights are available, and we'll gladly accept the highest bidder for Pickles and Violet's love story because it's Homeward Bound meets When Harry Met Sally. It's just a perfect story.
I love it. Easy sell. Let's shift gears a little bit and get into the weeds and talk about marijuana. That's a little Brooklyn paper pun for you.
Do you want a job? Because we're always looking for punny correspondents.
Yeah, sure. If you need like a freelance punster, I'm available. So New York might be in the position to legalize marijuana this year.
It seems like this will be the year. I mean, Governor Cuomo was pushed really far to the left last fall when he was running against Cynthia Nixon, who was very pro-legalization. And our, District Attorney Eric Gonzalez has been really out in the forefront of legalization, and not only legalization, but non-prosecution for a lot of misdemeanor marijuana offenses. And so I think, through his efforts and now the governor's sort of jumping on board, it really could be a landmark year for the state, but also for the borough, where the first medical marijuana center opened just 2 weeks ago, right around here on Flatbush Avenue, across from the Barclays Center. Sativa, which, again, pun masters over there, it's not spelled like the strain of marijuana, but it's a twist on that.
And you described it as sort of like a spa-like environment?
Yeah, the owners, they equate it to more of a day spa than, your traditional smoke shop. The photos of the place, if you've seen inside, which we have, it seems very modern and serene. It's got lovely shelves curated with their products, none of which actually have the plant marijuana or edibles infused with the plant, because the state's medical marijuana laws prohibit those parts of the drugs to be sold as part of the policy. But it looks, it's serene. You need to have a New York State medical marijuana ID to get in, but it's not, your average toke shop. It's very fancy, swanky, upmarket, yeah.
A couple of the items that you mentioned that you were going to be keeping an eye on had to deal with zoning and new skyscrapers that might be coming in.
Absolutely.
Talk to us about a couple of those.
So, we had on our list three major sort of development stories from across the borough. One is going on down in Coney Island, where there are a slew of developments going up, near the boardwalk on Surf Avenue, many of them with affordable housing, which is great for the neighborhood. But that neighborhood is really set for some big visual changes over the next several years as these projects get off the ground, quite literally. And another more sort of concerning rezoning that was approved just as the last year ended, and within days of the new year, was one over in Crown Heights near the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, where a developer for years has been trying to get these two towers off the ground near Franklin Avenue at about 16 stories, which garden patrons and fans worry will cast harmful shadows on the green space. The developer did a shadow study indicating that no, that would not happen, but some anti-gentrification advocates over there did their own study with experts saying, yes, that would happen. So it's kind of, this shady space. Ultimately,
you can't stop.
I can't. I don't have many friends, MacKenzie, because I just go there. Councilmember Lori Cumbo, she's a big proponent of increasing the housing stock, especially the affordable housing stock in the borough. She greenlit another controversial development in Crown Heights last year at the Bedford Union Armory because of the amount of affordable units it would bring. So she gave her blessing to a rezoning for these two towers because she was able to negotiate a deal in which the developer agreed to set aside space for even more units. Time will tell whether the air height is actually problematic for the garden. But also, what's more interesting and what we're more keeping our eye on is how that vote will inspire other developers and, inspire other decisions on rezonings that are sort of starting right now in that general area. A little further north over in Gowanus, the city last year released its proposal to rezone a huge swath of 4th Avenue to allow for buildings around 17 stories high, I believe. And between the canal cleanse and other projects in Gowanus, that is something that this year I think is really going to kind of heat up for so many of our stories to watch, change the way a neighborhood looks and change the way, the heights rises. That the struggle over accepting it and sort of turning it down is at the heart of so many of these stories.
Sure.
I mean, it's something we see every single day.
And the building of high-rises in Brooklyn is not new, but it sounds like these buildings might be precedent-setting for other neighborhoods as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing with so many of these taller buildings is once one goes up, you literally have the precedent to point to and say,
Right.
but that's there. So what about ours?
Let's talk about babies. So
Let's talk about them.
Brooklyn is poised to surpass Chicago as
Yes.
the third most populous city
Yes.
in the nation.
Yes, we could be there, MacKenzie. The fact of the matter is that, you know, data being what it is, it often takes years to kind of sort down the final numbers. But I think as of 2020, excuse me for checking my own records, as of 2017, we were maybe 100,000 people fewer than Chicago.
That's within reach.
That's very much
Yes.
within reach. And on New Year's Day alone, there were at least 5 babies born this year. So we're getting there.
And you also mentioned maybe a few squishy ways to beat Chicago, including annexing Ridgewood.
Yes, there's
Yeah.
always been there's always been debate over the real, you know, border between Bushwick and Ridgewood, and now, as with the about face in the L train shutdown plans, you know, that neighborhood is even more kind of encroaching into Bushwick territory because we're finding I don't even know what you called Ridgewood people, Ridgewooders, Ridgewoodians.
Ridgewoodians, I like that. Yeah.
Sounds very noble and distinguished. A lot of them are chiming into, you know, the conversations about what's going to happen now that the plan has changed. You know, are they going to keep bike lanes that they promised as vital, you know, connection corridors between neighborhoods further east in Brooklyn and Williamsburg and also Manhattan? Are they going to provide bus services? You know, so a lot of those Ridgewoodians are affected by issues that we're watching, and so I think it would be certainly within reason to
It does sound like they have more in common,
acquire them.
perhaps,
Yes.
with Brooklynites, and they
Absolutely.
should consider being annexed.
Yeah, I mean-
peacefully annexed. I actually just attended a friend's goodbye party last night, and she's leaving Bed-Stuy for Chicago. So we have.
Oh my gosh, so we're
she
losing
and her
one.
fiance, so we have 2 to make up
Does
for.
she read the paper or?
I will urge her to reconsider.
Fair enough.
Given the fact that we could be
There's
the
still
third.
time for
yeah,
her.
Brooklyn needs you, baby
Yeah, all of
makers.
you, please.
Yeah. So let's also, speaking of population, let's talk about the census.
Yes.
So the census is coming in 2020.
It's coming next year, but I think you're going to see a lot of action about it this year.
Right. And the story to really watch for is this citizenship question,
Yes.
right? But even if the citizenship question isn't on the census, are we going to see a cooling effect either way of people in our borough concerned about showing up for the census?
I think that would be a reasonable argument to make. You know, I think that many of this presidential administration's policies and tactics have led immigrants in Brooklyn and beyond to maybe shy away from, you know, claiming what they're rightfully owed and making their presence known. And whether or not they're specifically asked to state their citizenship on the census when it comes time in 2020, I think getting them to participate regardless is going to be a big effort here, which is why, you know, one of the reasons why Borough President Adams has formed his own committee to really get boots on the ground and encourage people to participate in this, because it is a vital measurement of how we will be represented.
One of your stories to watch is about the public advocate's race. Can
Yes.
you name someone who is not running for public advocate?
Myself.
Yet?
Yes, I haven't announced my candidacy yet.
No time like the present. Here we are.
Yeah. I'm not quite ready, but no. It's a extremely crowded race. I think it will filter out as the date for the election, which Mayor de Blasio set as February 26th, approaches. But you know, it's interesting because there are a number of Brooklynites who are running, including Councilman Jumaane Williams, who is sort of leading the pack in many ways, but also my Bushwick councilman Raphael Espinal is putting up a good fight for it, and you know what's really funny or ironic is how many people are running for this seat, even as other local politicians are trying to have it abolished. So, you know, that race is one to watch for many reasons, not only because of the number of people participating, but also because the position itself is such a hot button office.
Right.
And,
It's been a springboard.
well,
to higher
many people
positions.
say it has been a springboard. I mean, Mayor de Blasio held the office. Tish James, now our new Attorney General, held the office. It has been used as a springboard, but I also think that it serves a vital role in checking, you know, and balancing the government.
And on a sadder note, one of the most poignant stories that you are continuing to cover is about Luz Gonzalez.
Yes.
The 4-year-old who was killed in a hit-and-run accident. Tell us a little bit about that story and about the developments that are going to be forthcoming in the new year.
So that story is another one that's close to home for me. I live in Bushwick. The collision happened blocks from my apartment. I walk by the laundromat every so often, and it's just really tragic. I mean, there's video footage showing the driver run over the young girl. I mean, it's kind of indisputable that it happened. She was stopped by police a block away when she was driving away. They let her go. And this was back in June. The girl's parents, speaking of those who might not want to participate in the census, you know, they're here. They've been in Brooklyn for a long time. They are not legal residents of the city, but they, you know, they're working, they're here, they're working towards citizenship. And, you know, it opens, they weren't able to go back. She was buried in Mexico. They weren't able to go back or chose not to go back because they were afraid they wouldn't be able to get back in. And, you know, it opens a broader conversation that, you know, probably isn't meant for this episode of the show, but, you know, over citizenship in general. And, you know, it's not something you just get when you get off a plane. You work toward it. You prove that you're a contributing member of society. And these poor people who lost their daughter felt like all the efforts they've made toward that goal could have been lost had they gone home and buried her, which is tragic. And, you know, whether or not the driver is charged will not affect that aspect of the story. But those who seek justice, I think, you know, argue that it would provide some sort of solace to the parents for, you know, the hard decisions they've had to make in the aftermath of that crash.
Let's stick with transportation and talk about the BQE.
Yes.
So one of the proposals for the fixes that are needed to the BQE is to turn the Brooklyn Promenade into an expressway.
Yes.
So talk to us a little bit about that. I know that residents are understandably upset.
Yeah.
Brooklyn Heights residents.
You know, it's definitely upsetting is one way to describe it. You know, the city last September sort of dropped this bomb on Brooklyn Heights and the surrounding neighborhoods that, yes, there are two options that they feel were the best to repair the triple cantilever and surrounding stretch of expressway. One would be to basically reroute all of the triple cantilever's lanes, so 6 lanes of traffic, 3 going towards Queens, 3 going towards Bay Ridge, onto the promenade, which, if anybody has walked, as anybody who's walked it knows, runs right behind several buildings in Brooklyn Heights. So, you know, this would be traffic. You know, you'd be having your morning coffee, and you could wave at your neighbor who's going to work because you could see their car right through your window.
Very expensive brownstones.
Very expensive,
yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a big tourist draw as well.
Exactly. I mean, the
Parents
promenade
love
is
it.
one of the most beloved attractions, not only in Brooklyn, but in the greater New York area.
So it'll be decided this year whether or not they will proceed with that plan or a more gradual but longer plan to shut down lane by lane. Is that right?
Right. Or a third option, which the city said it was considering after it was brought to their attention by leaders of the Brooklyn Heights Association, which would be to build the temporary roadway closer to Brooklyn Bridge Park along these noise-muffling berms that, you know, the city and the park spent millions of dollars building over the last several years. It's like, which multi-million-dollar homes get the short end of the stick?
Right.
But the city wants, you know, it's saying it can start the job as soon as 2020. I mean, I think, you know, by start it, that's staging and stuff. But yes, to your point, they're going to have to choose a way forward this year if they really want to stick to that timeline. Yeah, I mean, the big threat here is that by 2026, transit experts believe the triple cantilever will start to crumble.
Right.
So.
All right, so our number one story to watch, L-Train.
L-Train. I mean,
what's happening?
You know what? Good question.
What the L is going on, as your headline says.
What the L is going on. I mean, this was really the curveball of 2019 because quite literally after our 19 stories to watch in 2019 went to press last Wednesday, you know, my reporter Julianne Cuba, who's been covering the shutdown for months and years, she got a call saying, you're going to want to be in Manhattan at the governor's office at 11 a.m. for this meeting. You know, he kind of lowered expectations. He said, you know, he didn't expect it to be any less than 15 months of L. And he didn't really suggest that there would be a massive change coming. So when he dropped this news on January 3rd, I was still warming up after my polar bear plunge down in Coney Island on New Year's Day. It was like shockwaves across Brooklyn. And the past week has really been an effort for our staff to kind of make heads or tails of the new plan, which many details of which are still kind of nebulous. I mean, the basic scheme that Cuomo proposed is one that will allow night and weekend repairs, which is something they floated back in 2016 when they were presenting two options, whether to shut it down entirely, the Brooklyn to Manhattan tunnel, or whether to slowly repair it over nights and weekends. But again, you know, as the president of the North Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce told us in a story in our next week's issue, which is fully dedicated to the aftermath of this news, you know, nights and weekends are huge times for traveling along the L line. You've got neighborhoods like Williamsburg and Bushwick where nightlife is a huge industry, where people are going on the weekends. So, you know, just keeping it open and reverting the work to those times doesn't necessarily mean, you know, blue skies ahead for a lot of people in these neighborhoods. And not only that, but at the other end of the L, you know, over in Canarsie and stops further east, you have a lot of people who are commuting into Manhattan, who are working in healthcare, who have jobs that are not 9 to 5. And so, you know, their commutes are already quite long. And how this will affect those people's lives, you know, it could be far more dramatic than them having to find another way to their job.
Right. If it's a partial apocalypse, there might not be as much help for the people who actually need help.
Right. And I think that's a big concern, you know, because when it was a full apocalypse, there were, you know, a slew of alternate transportation options were rolled out. And now the fate of many of them is up in the air.
Right.
And, you know, the transit chiefs are saying, give us time, give us time. But Cuomo's saying it's still probably going to start in April, so there isn't that much time.
Right.
I mean, 3 months pass in a blink. That's how quick it took to find Pickles.
Well, we're glad that Pickles is safe.
I mean, most importantly.
And we will continue keeping an eye on the Brooklyn paper to learn more about the L train shutdown and all of the other 18 other stories to keep an eye on.
Please do. New issues out every Friday in print in neighborhoods across the borough, and we are updated every day online at brooklynpaper.com.
Thank you so much for joining us, Anthony.
Thank you, MacKenzie.